Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the cool glass of the observation deck, watching Earth's blue marble turn slowly below. The International Space Station had been her home for 8 months now, but tonight felt different. Tonight, the universe was about to speak. "Elena, we're getting something," called Marcus Chen from the communications array. His voice carried that edge of excitement that made her stomach flutter. After 15 years of listening to cosmic static, they'd learned to recognize when something extraordinary was happening. She floated over to his workstation, where streams of data cascaded across multiple monitors. The Deep Space Communication Array had been detecting unusual patterns for 3 days now, but nothing like this. The signal was coming from everywhere at once, as if the entire galaxy had suddenly decided to sing in harmony. "It's not random," Marcus whispered, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "Look at these mathematical sequences. Perfect prime numbers, geometric progressions, musical intervals. This is deliberate communication." Elena's breath caught. The signal wasn't just organized, it was beautiful. Each pulse contained layers of meaning, mathematical concepts that seemed to build upon each other like a cosmic symphony. But what struck her most was the underlying pattern. Every frequency, every modulation, every pause seemed designed to convey a single, overwhelming message. "My God," she breathed. "It's universal. They're broadcasting the same message on every possible frequency, in every conceivable mathematical language." Back on Earth, the Pentagon Situation Room was buzzing with activity. General Harrison Steele stood at the head of the table, his weathered face grim as he studied the preliminary reports. Around him, the nation's top military and intelligence officials leaned forward, their expressions ranging from fascination to fear. "Let me understand this correctly," Steele said, his voice cutting through the murmur of conversation. "We've detected a coordinated transmission from multiple points across the galaxy, all arriving simultaneously." Dr. Patricia Wells, the NSA's chief cryptographer, nodded grimly. "That's correct, General. The signal appears to originate from at least 47 different star systems, all transmitting in perfect synchronization. The level of coordination required for this type of operation is beyond anything we've ever imagined." Steele's jaw tightened. In his 40 years of military service, he learned to recognize the signs of a coordinated attack. Multiple units, synchronized timing, coordinated communication. This had all the hallmarks of a massive military operation. "What's the content of the message?" he asked. Dr. Wells hesitated. "We're still working on the translation, but the mathematical structure suggests complex operational parameters, coordinates, timing sequences, resource allocation formulas. It looks like detailed logistical planning." Meanwhile, in the civilian sector, Dr. Amelia Richardson was having a very different experience. The renowned linguist and xenobiologist had been invited to NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory to assist with the translation effort. Unlike the military analyst, she approached the signal with wonder rather than suspicion. "This is incredible," she told her colleague, Dr. James Morrison, as they worked through the night. "The mathematical concepts embedded in this signal represent universal constants, things that any intelligent species would recognize. Pi, the golden ratio, prime numbers. But they're not just listing them, they're using them to construct something beautiful." James looked up from his workstation, where he'd been analyzing the signal's harmonic structure. "It's like music, Amelia. Not just random mathematical concepts, but organized into patterns that create, I don't know how else to describe it, emotional resonance." Amelia nodded, her eyes bright with excitement. "Exactly. This isn't a technical manual or a scientific treatise. This is art. They're trying to communicate something that transcends pure logic, but their interpretation never made it to the Pentagon. The military had classified the signal as a matter of national security, and civilian analysis was being conducted in isolation. From the official intelligence assessment, Dr. Wells presented her findings to General Steele 3 days later. The translation, filtered through decades of military training and paranoia, painted a terrifying picture. The signal contains detailed operational parameters for what appears to be a galaxy-wide military campaign, she reported. 47 different positions, synchronized timing, resource allocation formulas, and what appears to be targeting data for specific solar systems. She brought up a holographic display showing the signal's mathematical structure. These coordinate systems correspond to strategic positions throughout the galaxy. The timing sequences suggest a coordinated assault designed to overwhelm defensive capabilities through simultaneous attacks. General Steele studied the display, his expression growing darker. "And Earth is one of the targets?" "Yes, sir. The mathematical references to our solar system are unmistakable." Sol, third planet, specific gravitational and orbital parameters. They know exactly where we are and exactly what we are. The room fell silent. For decades, humanity had wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer. And it was more terrifying than anyone had imagined. Recommendations. Steele asked. Colonel Sarah Hendricks, the Pentagon's chief strategic planner, stepped forward. Sir, if this is indeed a coordinated attack plan, we need to consider preemptive action. Our deep space defense grid is operational, and we have the capability to strike at least a dozen of these positions before they can coordinate their assault. You're talking about starting an interstellar war, Dr. Wells said quietly. I'm talking about preventing our extinction, Hendricks replied. If they're planning to attack simultaneously, from 47 different positions, our defensive capabilities will be overwhelmed. Our only chance is to disrupt their coordination before they can execute their plan. General Steele was quiet for a long moment. The decision weighed heavily on him. Launch humanity's first interstellar military strike, or wait to see if his interpretation of the signal was correct. Either way, the consequences would be beyond imagination. How long do we have? He asked. Dr. Wells consulted her analysis. The timing sequences suggest the operation will commence in 72 hours. Then we need to act now. Steele decided. Initiate Operation Starfall. I want our deep space defense grid locked onto every transmission source. If we're going to fight for our survival, we strike first. The decision was made in secret, without consultation with civilian leadership or international allies. The military believed they were acting to save humanity. They had no idea they were about to commit the greatest act of genocide in galactic history. The Kepler Deep Space Defense Array had been humanity's greatest technological achievement. Hidden in the asteroid belt, the massive weapons platform was equipped with antimatter missiles capable of crossing interstellar distances in a matter of hours. It had been built to defend against potential alien invasion, but now it would be used to launch humanity's first strike against extraterrestrial life. Admiral Rebecca Torres commanded the array from the underground facility in Colorado. She'd spent her entire career preparing for this moment, but now that it was here, she felt the weight of history pressing down on her. Target confirmation. On all 47 positions, reported Lieutenant Commander David Kim. Antimatter missiles are armed and ready for launch. Admiral, called out Dr. Martinez from the monitoring station. We're still receiving the signal. It's getting stronger. Torres nodded grimly. They're probably finalizing their attack plans. Launch sequence is authorized. Execute Operation Starfall. The missiles launched in perfect synchronization, streaking across the solar system at nearly the speed of light. Each one carried an antimatter warhead capable of destroying a small moon. Their targets were the sources of the mysterious signal, the positions from which humanity believed an invasion was being coordinated. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the launches from the International Space Station, her heart sinking as she realized what was happening. She'd spent the last 3 days analyzing the signal with her team, and their conclusions were very different from the military's. Marcus, we need to get this to NASA immediately, she said, her voice urgent. The military has completely misinterpreted the signal. Marcus looked up from his workstation, where he'd been working on the final translation. Elena, I don't think they're going to listen. They've already classified this as a military operation. Then we have to try. She insisted. This isn't a battle plan. It's a message of peace. The translation they'd been working on told a completely different story. The mathematical sequences weren't military coordinates, they were artistic expressions. The timing patterns weren't attack synchronization, they were musical rhythms. The resource allocation formulas weren't military logistics, they were instructions for creating beauty on a cosmic scale. Look at this, Elena said, bringing up their analysis. The entire signal is structured as a mathematical poem. Each sequence builds on the previous one, creating patterns that are designed to be universally beautiful. It's not a message to any specific species, it's a gift to the entire galaxy. Marcus nodded, his expression pained. It's a peace offering. They're trying to show us that intelligence can create beauty. That consciousness can transcend mere survival. They're trying to unite the galaxy through shared appreciation of mathematical and artistic beauty. But their desperate attempts to contact the Pentagon were blocked by military security protocols. The missiles were already halfway to their targets. The first impact occurred at the Vega system, where an ancient civilization had been broadcasting their contribution to the galactic symphony for over 1,000 years. The antimatter warhead struck their orbital communication array, instantly vaporizing a structure that had taken centuries to build and had been designed to last for millennia. The explosion was visible from Earth, a brief flash of light that appeared in the constellation Lyra. To observers on Earth, it looked like a dying star. In reality, it was the death of a civilization that had spent its entire existence creating beauty. The second impact occurred at Proxima Centauri, where a young species had just achieved interstellar communication and was broadcasting their first contribution to the galactic message. They had been so excited to join the cosmic community that they had pointed every transmitter on their planet toward the galaxy center, adding their voice to the universal song. The antimatter missile struck their primary communication satellite, destroying not just the equipment but the orbital station, where their greatest minds had gathered to participate in this historic moment. In an instant, an entire species' first attempt at interstellar communication became their last. One by one, the missiles found their targets, ancient civilizations, young species just discovering space flight, collective minds that had existed for millions of years. All of them were struck down in humanity's preemptive attack. Each impact silenced a voice that had been contributing to the galaxy's greatest artistic achievement. The signal began to fade as the transmission sources were destroyed. What had been a complex, beautiful symphony became a broken, fragmented whisper. The galaxy's first attempt at universal communication was dying, killed by the very species it had been trying to welcome. Dr. Amelia Richardson was in her laboratory at NASA when the impacts began. She had been working around the clock to complete her translation of the signal, driven by a growing certainty that something was terribly wrong with the military's interpretation. "James," she called to her colleague, her voice tight with urgency. "I need you to look at this. The harmonic structure of the signal, it's not random. It's following classical musical patterns, but on a scale that encompasses the entire galaxy." James joined her at the holographic display, where the signal's structure was mapped out in three-dimensional space. The pattern was unmistakable, a vast, complex musical composition that used the entire galaxy as its instrument. "My God," he whispered, "it's a symphony. They're using the natural resonances of different star systems to create music on a galactic scale." Amelia nodded, her hands trembling as she highlighted different sections of the signal. Each transmission source is playing a different part. The timing sequences aren't military coordination, they're musical notation. The mathematical formulas aren't battle plans, they're instructions for creating harmony across interstellar distances. They watched in horror as the signal began to weaken. The beautiful, complex patterns that had taken who knows how long to develop were falling apart as the transmission sources went dark one by one. "They're destroying it," Amelia said, her voice breaking. "They're destroying the most beautiful thing in the universe." The final translation came too late. By the time Dr. Richardson's team had decoded the complete message, 47 different civilizations had been attacked, their communication capabilities destroyed. Their first attempt at galactic unity turned into a massacre. The message was simple, profound, and heartbreaking. "To all who hear this voice, we offer harmony. We who have learned to sing together across the vast distances of space invite you to join our song. Let us create beauty together. Let us prove that consciousness can transcend the darkness between stars. We offer you peace. We offer you friendship. We offer you a place in the galactic community. Will you sing with us?" General Steele received the civilian translation 6 hours after the last missile had found its target. He stood in the Pentagon Situation Room, reading the document with growing horror as he realized what they had done. "Sir," Dr. Wells said quietly, "we need to consider the possibility that our interpretation was incorrect." Steele looked up at her, his face ashen. "Incorrect, Doctor. We've just launched an unprovoked attack on 47 different civilizations based on a misunderstanding." The room was silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant sound of ventilation systems. The weight of their actions was beginning to sink in. They had achieved something unprecedented in human history. They had started an interstellar war by mistake. "What are our options?" Steele asked. Colonel Hendricks consulted her tactical display. "Sir, we have no way to recall the missiles. They are antimatter weapons traveling at near light speed. Even if we could communicate with them, they don't have the capability to self-destruct." "I'm not talking about the missiles," Steele said. "I'm talking about the aftermath. What happens when the galaxy realizes what we've done?" The silence stretched longer this time. Nobody wanted to voice the obvious conclusion. Humanity had just announced its presence to the galaxy. By committing an act of unprecedented aggression, they had been invited to join a community of peaceful species, and their response had been to attack. "We need to prepare for retaliation," Dr. Wells said finally. 47 different civilizations, some of them possibly millions of years older than us. All of them now aware that humanity exists and is willing to use violence without provocation. "Sir," came a voice from the communications station. "We're receiving a new signal." The room froze. After the destruction of the original transmission sources, the galaxy had fallen silent. Now something new was broadcasting, and nobody knew what to expect. Put it through, Steele ordered. The new signal was different from the original. Where the first message had been complex and beautiful, this one was simple and direct. It carried the weight of profound sadness, transmitted in mathematical concepts so basic that even the most primitive civilization could understand them. Dr. Richardson's team, working frantically to translate the new signal, delivered their findings within hours. The message was being broadcast from the galactic center, from a collective intelligence that had been observing the galaxy for millions of years, to the species from the small blue world. The message began. We have witnessed your response to our invitation. We grieve for the voices that have been silenced, for the civilizations that will never again contribute to our galaxy's song. We do not understand why you chose violence in response to our offer of peace. The message continued, detailing the civilizations that had been destroyed. Each one had been described in terms of their contributions to galactic culture, their artistic achievements, their philosophical insights. The picture that emerged was of a galaxy rich with diversity, creativity, and wisdom, a community that humanity had shattered with their first contact. We do not seek revenge, the message concluded. Violence breeds only violence, and we have seen enough death today. But we cannot ignore what has been done. The galaxy will remember this day, and the name of your species will be spoken with sorrow for generations to come. You have chosen to be alone in the universe, so be it. The signal ended, and the galaxy fell silent once more. But this time, the silence was different. It wasn't the quiet of empty space, it was the silence of a community that had turned away in disappointment and grief. Dr. Elena Vasquez floated in the International Space Station's observation deck, watching Earth turn below her. The planet looked the same as always, but she knew that everything had changed. Humanity had taken its first step into the galactic community, and it had been a step backward into isolation. Elena, Marcus said softly, floating up beside her. NASA is recalling us. They want us back on Earth for debriefing. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The signal had been so beautiful, so full of hope and possibility, and they had destroyed it out of fear and misunderstanding. Do you think they'll forgive us? Marcus asked. Elena pressed her hand against the glass again, feeling the cool surface against her palm. I don't know, but I hope they remember that not all of us chose this. Some of us were trying to understand, trying to respond with wonder instead of fear. The return to Earth was somber. The crew of the International Space Station had been among the first humans to truly understand what the signal meant, and they had watched helplessly as their species destroyed the greatest gift the universe had ever offered. The aftermath was swift and devastating. Within days, the story leaked to the media. Humanity learned that their first contact with extraterrestrial intelligence had been a disaster of unprecedented proportions. The peaceful message that had been misinterpreted as a battle plan, the 47 civilizations that had been attacked without provocation, the galactic community that had welcomed them with open arms only to be repaid with violence. The political consequences were immediate. Governments fell, military leaders resigned in disgrace, and the international community struggled to come to terms with what had been done in humanity's name. The weapons that had been built to defend Earth had instead been used to announce humanity's presence to the galaxy as a species to be feared and avoided. But perhaps the most profound consequence was the silence that followed. The galaxy had indeed turned away from humanity. No more signals were detected. No more attempts at communication. The vast community of intelligent species that had existed just beyond humanity's reach had closed its doors, leaving Earth alone. In the cosmic dark, Dr. Amelia Richardson spent the rest of her career trying to decode the fragments of the original signal that had been preserved before the transmissions were destroyed. Each piece revealed new layers of beauty and meaning, new insights into the civilizations that had been lost. She published papers on the mathematical poetry of the Vega Collective, the harmonic theories of the Proxima Centauri composers, the philosophical frameworks of the Galactic Council of Minds. But these were just fragments now, pieces of a greater whole that had been shattered by humanity's first contact. The galaxy's greatest symphony had been reduced to broken notes, and no one would ever hear the complete composition. Years passed. The Deep Space Defense Array was decommissioned, its weapons dismantled as humanity tried to signal its peaceful intentions to a galaxy that was no longer listening. New protocols were established for any future contact with extraterrestrial intelligence, protocols that emphasized understanding over fear, cooperation over conflict. But the galaxy remained. SILENT. Dr. Elena Vasquez eventually returned to Earth and became director of the new International Institute for Peaceful Contact. Her job was to prepare humanity for the possibility of future contact with alien intelligence, to ensure that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. She often stood in the Institute's observation deck, looking up at the stars and wondering, what might have been? Somewhere out there in the vast darkness of space was a community of intelligent beings who had once offered humanity a place among them. They had extended a hand of friendship across the cosmic void, and that hand had been slapped away in fear and violence. The Institute's primary mission was to monitor the galaxy for any signs of renewed contact, any indication that the galactic community might be willing to give humanity a second chance. But as the years passed, the silence deepened. The galaxy had moved on, and humanity had been left behind. Sometimes, late at night, Elena would receive reports from the deep space monitoring stations. Brief, fragmentary signals that might have been attempts at communication, or might have been nothing more than cosmic background noise. Each time, her heart would leap with hope, only to be disappointed when the signals failed to repeat or resolve into coherent messages. The tragedy of humanity's first contact had become a cautionary tale studied in schools and universities around the world. Children learned about the importance of understanding over fear, of seeking peaceful solutions to problems that seemed threatening. The military doctrines that had led to the disaster were abandoned, replaced by protocols that emphasized communication and cooperation. But the lesson had come too late. The galaxy had offered humanity a gift of immeasurable value, a place in the cosmic community, a chance to contribute to something greater than themselves, and humanity had thrown it away in a moment of panic and misunderstanding. Dr. Elena Vasquez never stopped hoping that someday, somehow, humanity might get another chance. She believed that the galaxy's capacity for forgiveness was as vast as its capacity for beauty, and that perhaps, given enough time and enough evidence of change, the galactic community might be willing to welcome humanity back. But as she grew older and the silence stretched longer, she began to understand that some opportunities, once lost, might never come again. The signal had been peace, and humanity had heard invasion. The galaxy had offered harmony, and humanity had chosen discord. The consequences of that choice would echo through the stars for generations to come. In her final years, Elena established the memorial to the Silenced Voices, a monument to the 47 civilizations that had been destroyed in humanity's first contact. Each name was inscribed in the mathematical languages they had used to communicate, creating a permanent record of the beauty that had been lost. The memorial stood as a reminder of what happened when fear overcame wonder, when the instinct for self-preservation overshadowed the capacity for understanding. It was humanity's promise to never again choose violence when offered peace, to never again hear invasion when the universe was singing harmony. But the galaxy remained silent, and the memorial stood as humanity's only connection to the cosmic community that had once welcomed them with open arms. The signal had been peace, and humanity had heard invasion plans. The consequences of that misunderstanding would haunt the species for the rest of its existence. A reminder that in the vast darkness of space, the greatest enemy was often not the unknown, but the fear of the unknown itself. The stars continued to shine, but they no longer sang. The galaxy continued to turn, but it no longer included humanity in its grand symphony. The signal had been peace, and humanity had chosen war. The universe had offered harmony, and humanity had responded with discord. And in the end, the greatest tragedy was not that humanity was alone in the universe, but that they had chosen to be alone when they could have chosen to belong.